Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. I have a relatively short video today, a catch-up of what's been happening regarding Advanced Heroquest. As long-time viewers will recall, I set myself the ridiculous challenge of trying to collect one of every classic Oldhammer miniature showcased in the Advanced Heroquest Monster Menagerie, Hero Roster, and NPC list. That means I am hunting down at least one of each miniature listed on enemy stat cards, hero and henchman character sheets in the core game rules book, the rules for the Terror in the Dark expansion, and every White Dwarf article, plus the miniatures from the paint set expansion and every miniature shown on any of the boxes, such as around the edge of the core set box. I call this a ridiculous challenge because we are looking at a lot of Oldhammer miniatures, some of which are incredibly hard to find and none of which are cheap to buy. As such, this is a long-term project. I am resigned to adding just a few miniatures here and there, when the hobby budget dictates I can. Basically, if it gets to the end of the month and I have a little spare change, I might pick up one miniature I need. But if I've already bought a new board game or something for the channel that month, then Advanced Heroquest gets put on the back burner for a few weeks. So, despite the generosity of numerous viewers who have helped me to build my collection, this project is still a long way from being completed, and indeed it may never be completed. But, since the last time I talked about this, I have picked up a few new miniatures, and that's what we're going to look at today. First, we have this glorious chunk of metal. This is a Skaven Rat Ogre. Rat Ogres were not in the Advanced Heroquest core set, or indeed Terror in the Dark. Rat Ogres appeared in the Trollslayer's Oath adventure, which was published in White Dwarf 134. That same adventure also introduced a selection of new Skaven enemies such as Beastmasters and Slave Masters, which really helps to expand the options for rat-focused missions. This is the exact miniature pictured in White Dwarf. It's a Citadel miniature from 1987, code C22 from the C series of miniatures. It has a name, Scar, but is also referred to simply as a Rat Ogre. I really love this miniature. It's not as big as newer Rat Ogres and looks a little dwarfed on the standard 40mm square base, but it has so much character and I love the posing. It has a planar design so it could be cast as a single piece, which means it does look better from the side than the front, but I think it has good movement and a strong silhouette. Oh, and these old Rat Ogres do not have tails. In terms of basing the miniature, I have used a 40mm resin base. These are solid so they don't have a recess underneath for a magnet, but they are slightly heavier than a regular recessed base. I drilled one hole for the peg on the Rat Ogre's foot, and then I drilled a second hole so I could install a magnet flush with the base. This will let me store the miniature in a crate lined with rubber steel, which is how I store all of my painted miniatures. Incidentally, if you want multiple Rat Ogres and like variety, or you are having difficulty finding a Scar, there is a second Rat Ogre in the C22 set. It has almost identical posing, but a different belt and the left hand is holding a wicked curved sword. Also, incidentally, I happen to have the C22 Skaven Handler in my collection. I showed off this little fella in a previous video. He appears in the Trollslayer's Oath as a Slave Master, not as the handler for the Rat Ogre. And finally, incidentally again, this Rat Ogre miniature will also be of interest to old school HeroQuest players. This exact Rat Ogre was pictured in the HeroQuest Marvel Winter Special magazine, shown in conjunction with a selection of additional new enemy types, Skaven Warriors, Skaven Whiteseers, and Trolls. Being as this magazine was for a UK audience and the enemies were designed with the European version of the HeroQuest rules in mind, the Rat Ogre stats were less than formidable. Move 8, Attack 3, Defend 3, Body 1, Mind 1. However, these new adversaries did not appear in the accompanying adventure, Revenge of the Weatherman. They appeared in the HeroQuest adventure, The Halls of Durg-Dol, which was also published in White Dwarf 134. And there the Rat Ogre and the Whiteseer had 2 body points each. What a treat for UK-based Zargon players. Moving on, the second miniature we're going to look at is this happy little chappie. In Advanced Heroquest, this is a Wight, and like the Rat Ogre, you won't find him in the core game. He is a new enemy introduced in the Terror in the Dark expansion. You may recall that expansion is incredibly expensive, so I printed and made my own copy, a process I documented across several videos here on the channel. I'm a big fan of the undead in fantasy gaming, and when I saw this guy on eBay, I had to have him. This model is a little older, dating from 1985, and is actually from the old Middle-earth range, so he's more than a Wight, he's a Barrow Wight, specifically from the ME73 range of Barrow Wights. There are 3 sculpts in that set, and honestly, this is the only really nice one. The other 2 are a bit odd. I picked this miniature up for a pretty low price, but there was an issue when it arrived. There was a crack on the front of the billowing skirt below the chainmail. Not a massive crack, but it was worrying nonetheless. Damage is never good, but you also hear horror stories about lead rot in these older miniatures, and that's a much bigger concern. Lead rot normally presents as a sort of whitish blooming, and the metal goes very dark grey, brittle and crumbly. It tends to happen as a result of poor storage. Miniatures that are stored in cardboard or wood in damp locations with poor air circulation are more prone to the chemical processes that cause the rot. Admittedly, I couldn't see any blooming in this instance, but there's always a chance that the seller had used a wire brush to scrub it off in the hopes of passing off the miniature for sale before it became a more serious issue. If they have done that, of course, they are very naughty. I've never had to deal with lead rot before, but it's one of those things you do read up on when you are collecting vintage miniatures, just in case. So I had seen all the advice, good and bad. The advice ranges from chuck the models away, to soak them in a mix of turpentine and mineral oil. Some people even suggest soaking in vinegar, but I'm convinced that's a bad idea. As I wasn't even sure if this crack was lead rot, my course of treatment was to don a face mask, you don't want to inhale this stuff, scrub the miniature with a stiff brush, soak it in clean spirit, dry it off and then cut away all the damaged area around the crack with a good modelling knife. The metal did feel a little soft and crumbly as I did this, but I cut away until I got to good metal, scrubbed out the wound again, and then I got out my green stuff. I am not an expert with green stuff, but with a bit of filling and sculpting I was able to build up the folds in the cloth so that it looks somewhat like the original piece. Then I got some spray undercoat on the miniature to seal it, and painting it is now my top priority. Hopefully the action I have taken will ensure the miniature survives. If it doesn't, this isn't the hardest miniature to source a replacement for, and I haven't lost too much. All that means there will probably be a painting guide for the Wight on the channel in the very near future. And that is it. Those are my latest acquisitions for Advanced Heroquest. I'm going to go and put the kettle on. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.